This day and time. What happened today, years ago.
Okay,
Thanks for
think about
watching.
this.
Like,
Just
subscribe, and ring that bell for more history
But
daily.
packed inside it, you've got these incredible rescues, like life or death stuff.
Yeah.
And then groundbreaking science that changed, well, everything about disease, plus the birth of a huge global car brand, but with a really complicated history.
Definitely complicated.
A number that's fundamental to maths, a young woman who became a martyr and a national symbol, an iconic clock starting to tick, and wow, a music album that just turned everything upside down.
It's pretty amazing when you lay it out like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
This specific week, May 26th to June 1st, it just holds so much. Moments of, intense crisis right alongside these huge leaps forward and cultural moments that still stick with us.
Exactly. Each day is like a little window onto something bigger.
For sure.
And that's what we want to do here. We've got these snapshots from history, and we're going to try and, dig a bit deeper than just the dates and facts.
For the connections, maybe.
Right.
The impact.
Yeah, the connections, the impact, why they still matter. So let's jump in. First up is Dunkirk, an absolutely staggering story of survival.
Right.
May 26, 1940, Dunkirk. Just the name itself, it paints a picture, doesn't it? Can you kind of set the scene for us, what was going on?
Okay, so imagine this. You've got something like 400,000 Allied soldiers, mostly British, but French too, and Belgians.
Okay.
And they are completely tracked, pushed right up against the English Channel on the beaches near Dunkirk. The German army's advance, the Blitzkrieg, it had been just devastatingly fast.
So their backs were literally against the wall or the sea?
Exactly. The sea behind them, German forces closing in fast. It looked like total annihilation. I mean, militarily, it was about as bad as it gets.
Wow. And this is where Operation Dynamo kicks in, sort of a desperate measure.
Totally desperate. It was run from these underground tunnels at Dover Castle by Admiral Bertram Ramsay. And it was incredibly risky. The Royal Navy just didn't have anywhere near enough ships to pull off an evacuation that big, especially with the enemy breathing down their necks.
So what do they do? This leads to that incredible part of the story.
It does. They have the thing way outside the box. They put out a call for civilian boats.
Just regular boats,
Yeah.
like fishing boats and stuff.
Fishing boats, pleasure yachts, ferries, even tiny little boats. Over 800 of them answered the call. Some got naval crews, but a lot were just manned by ordinary people, civilians sailing right into a war zone.
That's hard to fathom, sailing towards the fighting, the bombing.
Oh, the danger was immense. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, was constantly bombing the beaches, bombing the ships, trying to get people off.
So the RAF, the British Air Force, must have been involved too.
Absolutely critical. The RAF pilots were fighting intense dogfights overhead, trying to give the boats and the troops on the beach some kind of cover. It was just, chaos, constant danger everywhere.
And yet somehow it worked. I mean, the numbers are just astounding.
They are. Against all odds, in just over a week, they rescued nearly 338,000 soldiers.
Wow.
About 198,000 British and around 140,000 French and Belgian troops. They had to leave behind almost all their heavy equipment. Tanks, trucks, guns, a huge material loss.
But they saved the men.
They saved the experienced soldiers, and that was absolutely vital for Britain being able to stay in the war.
And it's interesting how this event, which was technically a massive military retreat, maybe even a defeat, it gets remembered differently.
Completely. The narrative shifted almost immediately. Instead of just being seen as a disaster, Dunkirk became this powerful symbol.
Of what? Resilience.
Resilience, definitely.
Yeah.
Defiance, the courage of the ordinary sailors, the Dunkirk spirit, It became this beacon of hope, actually. It showed that even facing disaster, there was this will to fight on. It boosted morale massively back home.
Incredible. Okay, let's shift gears now. From that massive collective effort to survive, we turn to an individual whose work was all about survival on a totally different scale, the microscopic level. Robert Koch. He died on May 27th, 1910.
Yes, Robert Koch. A truly giant figure in medicine. German doctor, researcher, he basically founded modern bacteriology. His work changed how we even think about disease.
And the diseases he tackled were terrifying back then, right? Anthrax, TB, cholera.
Absolutely terrifying. These were major killers. Koch was the one who actually identified the specific bacteria causing them. Anthrax in 1876. Then the big one, tuberculosis, the bacillus for TB in 1882.
Tuberculosis was huge then, wasn't it?
Oh, massive. Consumption, they called it. Then just a year later, 1883, he nails down the bacterium for cholera.
But it wasn't just finding them, was it? His big contribution was proving the link.
Exactly, that's the crucial part. He didn't just spot the microbes. He developed a method to prove that a specific microbe caused a specific disease. We still talk about Koch's postulates.
Right, I've heard of those. What are they, basically?
Well, it's a set of rules, a scientific standard. You have to find the microbe in the diseased animal, then grow it in a lab, a pure culture. Then you take that culture, put it into a healthy animal, and it has to cause the same disease.
Okay.
And then, the final step, you have to be able to get that same microbe back out of the newly sick animal. It sounds straightforward now, but it was revolutionary. It brought real scientific rigor to studying infections.
Definitely sounds foundational. And he won the Nobel Prize for it.
He did in 1905. Absolutely deserved. And his work had huge practical consequences. Think about tuberculin.
What was that?
Well, initially he hoped it could be a cure for TB, which sadly didn't work out and actually had some tragic results at first. But later, it became a vital tool for diagnosing TB, still used in variations today.
So his impact goes way beyond the lab.
Oh, completely. His discoveries were the bedrock for public health systems. Things like sanitation, clean water, hygiene. It all got a massive boost because people now understood how diseases spread. Plus, sterile surgery preventing infections in hospitals.
And just the basic idea of contagion.
Exactly. Understanding that diseases are passed on, often by these invisible things. It's the basis for how we handle epidemics even now, like with COVID-19. He fundamentally changed our relationship with disease.
Okay, from the invisible world of germs to something very visible, very tangible. A car. May 28th, 1937. The beginning of Volkswagen. And this one. This one has a pretty dark shadow over its origins, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The company's original name tells you a lot. Gesellschaft zur Vorbereitung des Deutschen Volkswagens MBH. Basically, the company for the preparation of the German people's car.
The people's car! Volkswagen, that was Hitler's idea, right?
Very much so. It was a key part of the Nazi propaganda effort. The Vision was a car that almost any German worker could afford.
How are they supposed to afford it?
Through a savings scheme. People bought special stamps, 5 Reichsmarks a week, stuck them in a book, and eventually they'd saved enough for their own KDF wagon.
KDF.
Yeah, Kraft durch Freude, meaning strength through joy. That was the name of the Nazi leisure organization that ran the scheme. The car itself was designed by Ferdinand Porsche.
That famous name. So the promise was a car for everyone, but then war.
But then the war. Exactly. The huge new factory built in Wolfsburg wasn't used for people's cars. It was immediately turned over to military production, making vehicles for the German army.
So what happened to all the people who'd been saving?
They never got their cars.
Yeah.
And they never got their money back either.
Yeah.
The savings were just gone, diverted to the war effort. It was a massive betrayal, really.
Wow. A really ugly start, and yet somehow Volkswagen becomes this huge global success story after the war.
It's an incredible turnaround, isn't it?
Yeah.
After the war, the British military actually got the factory running again. And then, against all odds, VW, and especially the Beetle, became a huge symbol of West Germany's economic miracle.
Yeah, the Beetle. That car is iconic. How did it shake off that early history?
It's fascinating. The car designed as, a tool of the Nazi state, somehow transformed. In the 50s and 60s, it became this symbol of the exact opposite: freedom, peace, individuality, the counterculture.
Wild.
It really shows how the meaning of something, even a car, can be completely flipped by history and culture. It's got this real duality to its story.
Okay, let's switch lanes completely now. From cars and politics to pure mathematics. May 29th, 1736. Doesn't sound like a big date, maybe, but it involves Euler and that number we all know, pi.
Right. It might seem obscure, but it was actually really important for standardizing things. Before the 18th century, if mathematicians wanted to talk about the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter.
You mean pi? 3.14 something?
Exactly, pi. But back then, there wasn't one single symbol everyone used. People used different letters or just wrote it out in words. It was messy.
Confusing, I bet.
Yeah, it could definitely hinder communication and collaboration. Then along comes Leonhard Euler, this absolutely brilliant Swiss mathematician.
Euler, yeah, big name in math.
Huge. And in his book, Mechanica, which came out on May 29, 1736, he consistently used the Greek letter for that specific ratio. He didn't invent the symbol, others had used it occasionally, but Euler's work was so influential that his usage basically made it the standard.
Huh. Just deciding to use one symbol consistently made that much difference.
It made a massive difference. Suddenly, mathematicians everywhere had a clear, unambiguous way to refer to this fundamental constant. Think about how often pi pops up in calculus, physics, engineering.
All over the place.
Right. Having that single symbol just streamlined everything. It made sharing ideas and building on each other's work so much easier.
And Euler himself, he was something else, wasn't he? Didn't he write, like, tons of papers?
Oh, unbelievably prolific. Over 800 papers and books. Even after he went blind, he kept working, dictating his ideas. His work touched on almost everything: planetary motion, fluid dynamics, graph theory, how bridges should be built,
Yeah.
even things that laid groundwork for modern computers.
Wow. So that little symbol, it's more than just a number for circles.
Much more. Thanks to Euler making it standard, it became like a universal key, a symbol representing this deep mathematical harmony you find throughout the universe. It's kind of beautiful, really.
From the beauty of mathematical constants to a story that's beautiful in a tragic way. May 30th, 1431, the execution of Joan of Arc. This one really hits hard, doesn't it?
It really does. Rouen, France. A 19-year-old girl, Joan, is burned at the stake, convicted of heresy by a court that was basically controlled by the English.
It's just such an incredible story leading up to that point. A peasant girl claiming she heard divine voices.
And then she somehow convinces the French court, gets command of troops, and leads them to this massive victory at Orleans.
Which was a huge turning point in the war, right? The 100 Years' War.
A major turning point. It completely shifted the momentum. Her beliefs, her leadership, it just rallied the French. And she was instrumental in getting Charles VII crowned as the rightful king.
An absolutely meteoric rise. But then it all fell apart so quickly.
Politics, the shifting tides of war. She was captured by the Burgundians, who were allied with the English at the time, and they sold her to the English.
Sold her, wow.
Yeah. And the trial that followed, it was a sham. Politically motivated from start to finish, they needed to discredit her, to undermine the king she'd helped crown.
And her last reported word was just, Jesus. Heartbreaking.
Incredibly powerful. And, the attempt to silence her, to erase her, it completely backfired.
How so?
Her legacy just grew and grew. She became this potent symbol of French resistance, of faith under pressure, of national identity. And centuries later, in 1920, the Catholic Church made her a saint.
So they tried to burn away her influence, but it just made her legend stronger.
Exactly. Her spirit, her story just resonated through the centuries.
Okay, let's jump forward again, several hundred years, to a sound this time. A very specific, very famous sound starting May 31st, 1859. The first tick of Big Ben.
Ah, yes. The great clock of Westminster. Although everyone just calls the whole tower and the bell Big Ben. That first tick on May 31st was a big deal for London.
It wasn't just about telling time, was it? There's a backstory there, too.
There is. The clock tower was part of the massive rebuilding project after the old Palace of Westminster burned down in a huge fire in 1834.
Right, I remember that fire. So the clock was part of the new beginning.
Exactly. It was designed by the architect Charles Barry, who did the new Parliament buildings, and the clock mechanism itself was by Edmund Beckett Denison. It was meant to be a symbol of British engineering prowess, reliability, modernity.
And building it wasn't exactly smooth sailing either. Something about the bell cracking.
And that's right. The first huge bell they cast actually cracked during testing, had to be melted down and recast. Even the second bell, the one we know, developed a crack later on, which is why it has that slightly distinctive tone.
Huh, didn't know that.
And they insisted on incredible accuracy for the timekeeping. It was a real challenge.
So when it finally started ticking and chiming, that must have felt significant.
Oh, definitely. Those deep chimes rolling across London. It was more than a clock. It stood for stability after the fire, for resilience, for the nation rebuilding. It became an instant landmark.
And it still is, isn't it? Such a global icon.
Absolutely. It's weathered bombings in World War II. It's been the backdrop for protests, celebrations. It just keeps ticking through history. It's this constant marking time, marking history itself.
And finally, we hit June 1st, 1967, a date that, for music fans anyway, is absolutely massive. The U.S. release of the Beatles' Street Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh, yeah. Street Pepper. It wasn't just an album. It was like a cultural earthquake. It changed everything.
How so? I mean, the Beatles were already huge.
They were huge, but this was different. They completely reinvented themselves, stopped touring, became purely a studio band for this. They adopted these alter egos, the Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Right, it was a concept album, wasn't it?
Exactly. The first really big mainstream concept album, arguably, was like musical theater meets rock and roll meets Something totally new, and the amount of time and experimentation they put in,
How long did it take?
something like 129 days in the studio, which was just unheard of then for a pop album. They were playing with tape loops, orchestration, weird sound effects, pushing the recording technology of the time to its absolute limit.
And the songs themselves. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, A Day in the Life. They still sound incredible.
They were groundbreaking. Musically complex, lyrically adventurous, sometimes surreal. They weren't just churning out pop hits anymore. They were challenging norms, musically and culturally.
And that album cover. Instantly recognizable.
Oh, iconic. That collage of all those famous faces.
Yeah.
Like 60 different people on there. It perfectly captured that whole vibrant, slightly weird spirit of 1967.
And it won Album of the Year at the Grammys, didn't it? Which was unusual for rock music then.
First rock album ever to win that top prize. That was a huge moment, signaling that rock music was being taken seriously as art, not just disposable pop.
So it really did define a generation, in a way.
It absolutely did. It showed what an album could be, a complete artistic statement. It proved music could be revolutionary, could change how people saw the world.
So, wow, 7 days. Dunkirk, Koch, Volkswagen, Pi, Joan of Arc, Big Ben, Sag Great Pepper. Quite a journey through just 1 week on the calendar.
It really is.
When you look back at them all together like this, these events that seem so different, do you see any, common threads running through them?
That's the really interesting part, I think. Despite being all over the map, history-wise, you definitely see themes pop up again and again.
Like what?
Well, obviously, human resilience. Dunkirk is the huge example there, but even Joan of Arc, in a different way.
Right.
Then there's the sheer power of ideas and knowledge. Koch changing medicine, Euler standardizing pi.
Okay, yeah.
You see the complexity of progress, like with Volkswagen's dark origins turning into something else entirely. The creation of lasting symbols is huge, too. Pi, Joan, Big Ben, even the beetle, arguably. Symbols that mean so much more than the thing itself. And Guy Pepper shows how culture can just shift dramatically.
Yeah.
How art can lead the way.
It really does feel like a tapestry, doesn't it? All these different threads weaving together. Even something that seems small, like Euler picking a symbol, ends up having these huge ripples.
Exactly. History isn't just big battles and famous names. It's ideas, symbols, music, science, all interacting.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening, thinking about these 7 days, these threads we talked about, what other connections jumped out at you? What links can you see between, say, a rescue mission and a rock album, or a mathematical constant and a car? And maybe what does that tell us about how change actually happens?